PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have General Ravi Shankar with me, and we're going to talk about Lanka and the cascading effects of the crisis in Sri Lanka on the countries such as China and India. And before we jump into today's session, I want to give you guys a heads up that next Wednesday, same time, General Ravi Shankar and I will be talking about China's incursion in Bhutan and all the other aggressive moves that China is making and how the world is reacting to that. That's going to be our topic next Wednesday at 8 p.m. IST. And also, may I request all of you to like this program so that we have the maximum virality. There are things that we are going to discuss that perhaps you will not find in mainstream media. General Ravi Shankar, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir.
Namaskar. Thank you, Mr. Sri Iyer, for calling me once again on your show. And a very good evening to all those who've taken the trouble of listening to us. I look forward to a very interesting discussion on Sri Lanka.
General Ravi Shankar, so 100 days have elapsed now. The ruling party, the family has actually fled the country. The person that was appointed to take care of things, Ranil Wickremesinghe, also has resigned now. And what is...
No, he's not resigned. He's just got elected today.
Oh, he got elected today? Okay, I see.
Yeah,
I'm still catching up. So okay. Perhaps you can lay down the map as you see it, sir. The concerns that people have, what is happening in Sri Lanka, and perhaps the same template might play out in other neighboring countries of India. I heard Bangladesh also is going into major load shedding since yesterday. And we know what's happening in Pakistan. Just touch upon them, sir, but I leave the floor to you. We can start with Sri Lanka. Let's take it away, sir.
Thanks a lot. Look, Sri Lanka is the pointsman case for many things which is happening as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war and other issues. The Russia-Ukraine war has just tipped things over, especially in South Asia, where the countries have had weak economies, debt-ridden, trying to develop. Most of them have come into the debt trap of China. And, and China has cultivated many of these authoritarian strongmen as rulers. As a result, these countries are now boiling over. And it's the first country to be hit really is Sri Lanka. I think Pakistan is following, Nepal is there, and Bangladesh is a little farther behind. But today, the country which actually deserves our attention is Sri Lanka. Like you rightly said, 100 days over. It's rarely that you see a president being driven away and that president not getting a place to stay, either in Maldives or Singapore. He's been told to move on from Singapore. In the interim, there's Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe today has got elected by the parliament as the president. He was earlier the prime minister, which he resigned, not resigned, all that, and he's got elected. It has got its own implications. Just because the Gotabaya Rajapaksa has left the country and Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who's been a 6-time PM of Sri Lanka, is in chair, doesn't mean that things are going to settle, because there are a lot of issues. We can discuss those issues as part of the Sri Lanka problem. Connected with that, Sri Lanka has a critical geostrategic location in the Indian Ocean. China has been wooing it quite a lot. For China, it is a very important piece of territory, or rather a foothold in the Indian Ocean. That has a dimension. For India, our closest neighbor, with ethnic links, minority links, in our neighborhood, part of our, earlier part of our regional shadow, but today more with China. This is an opportunity for us to break that string of pearls, right? But we also go there with a load of baggage. So actually, and then of course there are the international actors, IMF, UN, US, Japan, who are also in the fray. So actually, there are 4 parts to the Sri Lanka story as of now, if you really analyze. One is what's happening in Sri Lanka. the effect on India and what India should needs to do, then the Chinese factor, and then the international factor. So I think rather than my giving a one-way lecture, we could take each one up and you could lead me on to it.
Absolutely, General Ravi Shankar. One question or one clarification, sir. The way I understand the political system in Sri Lanka is the president is more powerful than the prime minister. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have an executive presidency, which they brought in some time back through amendment to the constitution. That's a sticking point. I'll come to that. Okay. Actually, today Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe was elected as the president, but that's again there's some muted protests. How this protest will go ahead, we don't know. If you remember, his office was also burnt last week.
Yes,
His
yes.
house was
House is
also
burned down.
burnt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know his acceptability. How it will boil over is to be seen. Okay. Then of course Sri Lanka has got the issue of his being selected itself is got a problem. You see, the Sri Lankan parliament today is two-thirds is it's got a two-thirds majority of the SLPP, Sri Lanka
Yes.
Perumana Podujana, which is Rajapaksa's party. Okay, that's the party which has elected Ranil Wickremesinghe with their majority. So, though it's supposed to be an all-party, all-unity kind of a government which is going to come up, we don't know. So, will that party allow Wickremesinghe to function? Question. Don't forget, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa and the rest of the Rajapaksa clan are there. Then you can't count them out. That influence is there. It is their party. They funded the party and hold the party. So even if it's a unity government, how much will this party allow these people to function? They'll always go back on issues or pull back on issues. Then this executive president, which you said, one of the major problems of Sri Lanka is that this president had too many powers. He could steamroll everyone. That's what has landed them in this problem, right? So they want to amend it. As part of the protests, the issue was that they had to amend it. But now that Mr. Wickremesinghe has become and got the powers, will he allow an amendment? In any case, this parliament is almost a lame duck parliament. They have to go in for elections sooner or later, right? Unless things change. Right. This parliament, I don't think, will amend the constitution so that executive president will continue. Then there are issues. People have protested that bring Gotabaya Rajapaksa back to face the law. If he faces the law, issues like war crimes, atrocities, human rights allegations, abducting journalists, all those issues will come. His ramrodding through the Tamil minority will come up. After all, there's a Tamil issue still there. The devolution of powers to the Tamilians have not happened, right? As per the amendment to the constitution. I think it's the 13th amendment to the constitution. I might be a little wrong, but that's not happened. The Tamil minority and the Muslim minority versus the Sinhala majority, or the Sinhala Buddhist majoritarianism is alive. Both the communities have a lot of distrust towards each other. Well, these are the issues. This is the mosaic which today you get in Sri Lanka. Of course, in this crisis, everyone has come together and said, look, first get rid of Rajapaksa. Now that it is gone, let's have an all-party approach. The election of Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe seems to be okay. But then everything is a little bad. Then the economy is where it is. The agriculture is short completely. Tourism is finished. And the IMF will not give one naya paisa till there's political stability. So that is also there. Their first priority has to be, of course, get food stuff and all that. That we'll talk a little later. Get political stability, get some process going, get the IMF loan going, get some currency coming in, get basic essentials available to people like gas, fuel, food stuff, revive agriculture. Their agriculture is completely short based on the organic and inorganic fertilizer used. The tea industry is completely down. So all that. But if you look at the positives, the military has been supportive of the whole process. They have not interfered. They have not interfered very harshly even with the protesters. Right? They've allowed things to move. How many times have you seen a president's palace being occupied and people not doing defacing that or no violence? People just went and had a picnic over there. So there is some semblance of balance. But then such protests don't take place spontaneously. There is some organization going on. What is this organization? Who's ignited these protests? These are the questions which are still hanging in the air. Right. But when you look at it overall, it appears that the Sri Lankans want a democratic process going and a democratic way to, get to their ends. So we wish them all the best. So we could discuss these issues which I've spoken, and then we can hop on to others.
Yes, sir. First off, let's look at the record of Sri Ranil Wickremesinghe. 6 times he has been Prime Minister. But it seems like most of the time he's like a placeholder for somebody else to come in and take over. That's how I understand it, General Ravi Shankar. Is Ranil Wickremesinghe the stabilizing hand today, in your opinion? Because he's also seen as a Rajapaksa man. That's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah, he is. He's largely seen as a Rajapaksa man. That's why they burnt his house also. That's why, even now there are some muted protests. There are protests. It's not as if it's muted. It's only that it's not wholesale. It might, the situation might go tense and bad in a couple of days. What are the other choices they had? They had a choice of getting a neutral man, which I don't think worked out in their case. The third choice was a total leftist from the JVP. That would have been disastrous. They had the choice of the opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, but he pulled out, and he seems to be supporting Mr. Wickremesinghe. While I agree with you, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, who's been 6-time PM, he's been in and out of that office. I think what goes for him at this point of time is his experience. Maybe his acceptability he's been able to convey to all parties. Right? So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, what I told you, the parliament is dominated by Rajapaksa's party. They wouldn't have allowed anyone else to come in. And then there's a constitutional issue. I mean, there's not a constitutional issue. The issue is this: you have a parliament in power, which is got a majority of the president's party, whom you have thrown out. Will this parliament be acceptable to the people tomorrow? After all, this party is of Rajapaksa clan, and the Rajapaksa clan, except Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is still there. What I heard was, I don't know whether Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa attended the parliament or not. He might have. Nothing has happened to him. Nothing has happened. They're all going around free. So there's still issues there. So while I am hopeful that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe is a consensus candidate, right? It's not a bed of roses from here. Whether he is fit or not, only time will tell.
Thank you, General. One question that comes to my mind is, so India has been giving some aid to stabilize Sri Lanka. India's aid is not in form of money, but in form of food grains, in the form of tankers, crude tankers coming, or refined oil tankers, giving them essential fuel and so on and so forth. So this is actually a good policy, General Ravi Shankar, because if they had given, say, cash, there is always scope for pilferage, but here it is material that has to be consumed. So hopefully the pilferage is not enough. It's minuscule. There may be still some people who might want to try and hoard, but at least it stabilizes the situation to some extent. Yet, the feeling on the ground in Sri Lanka The common man is still not saying thank you, India. How did things come to this, sir? I mean, the IPKF happened 30 years ago, and both sides lost. I mean, India lost the prime minister. The LTTE got wiped out. How do you move forward? Also, I want to bring it to your attention, General Ravi Shankar. I don't know if you have followed this or not. The 2019 Easter bombings, the churches that were targeted, they were attended by one ethnic segment of Sri Lanka. I won't say who. So there was a targeted killing there. This is also of concern. So how do you see, why is it that Sri Lanka is not saying thank you, India, at least? I mean, it's not going to cost you anything, and India wants to continue doing this. And in fact, India never asked anything in return. They built a library in Afghanistan. They built dams for them. And in fact, President Trump derisively asked Modi, that's all you want to do. Unfortunately, the dam is still erect, and the library is still there. The parliament building is still there. So India does do things that help thrive in the countries that they go and help, with nothing in return. What do you feel is the problem, or what does India need to do to win the minds and hearts of Sri Lankans?
Look, at the outset, I would not fully agree with you when we say that they don't thank you. They've publicly said it. India is the only country which has come to their rescue, right? That has been told by their prime minister. They've been told by the main opposition leader, and even one of their ministers said this just 2 days back. He said, "Except India, no one has given us anything." So to that extent, I think there is a very clear this thing. And when I see interviews of, say, famous cricketers like 𝙒𝙗𝙤𝙦𝙤 and all that, they've been thanking India for what we've done. And we've done whatever is good for the people of Sri Lanka. We've given them their fundamental necessities. And no one else has given them, mind you, this is important. No one else has given them anything. And they know it. Now, the point is that we've reached out to the people. After all, we have an interest. What is our problem? Our problem goes back to the IPKF LTTE days. You see, we went there to sort out the problems between the two, right? To befriend both of them and resolve issues. And we exited being inimical to LTTE and IPKF. And the Sri Lankans. We didn't cover ourselves with glory at that point of time. I mean, that was a sorry episode. And after that, for good 20 years, we never interfered in whatever Sri Lanka was doing. We never interfered in the way the Rajpaksas handled LTTA and all that. We've been insisting on this devolution of powers to Tamils. It's not happened. And we've actually kept a little arm's length. When we left, right, and when we had this thing, China stepped in. That is when we created space for China to step in. Vacuum. Okay, and that vacuum was occupied by China in a big manner. They gave debts, they opened up their money bags and humbled out of where it is. That's a different story. We can discuss that. So we have to be careful. While most of the Sri Lankans thank us, right, and they acknowledge that India is the only country which has come to the rescue, they also wary of the fact that, or suspicious of India, that we will do a repeat of what we did then. So India has to play a fine line here. We should help them, but not interfere in their internal affairs. We need to assist them to their end without interfering in their end. Let them select their president. Whoever they select as their president will help them. Whoever is selected as the prime minister tomorrow will help them. But our underlying thing is that we help ultimately the people of Sri Lanka, and we should be a friend in need to the Sri Lankan people. We don't need to do more. That, I think, is the main issue. They also know that it was India who supported them in the IMF. When we about 2 months back, when we were having a discussion with the IMF, we took the Sri Lankans along and we facilitated the talk. In fact, virtually at that point of time, India stood like a guarantor to Sri Lanka. All this is known to people. It is not as if they don't know. Whether you want medicines, you want fuel, you want food, you want essentials. They're turning back to India, and I think that's important. And plus, we also have an interest. We don't need a spillover of whatever is happening there into Tamil Nadu, right? And that's why the parliamentary meet was held yesterday, where the external affairs briefed people from Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and all that, right? Political leaders, in that all party meet. Of course, others were also there. So we need to be a little careful. But like I said, this is our opportunity. We shouldn't let it go.
Yes, indeed. And one of the reasons that is being cited for the failure of IPKF is that somehow the policy wasn't consistent, and that Rajiv Gandhi was still earning his spurs as a prime minister, and perhaps he was a tad too aggressive, or whatever it is. There are some things that are not shared. We'll not go into that, General Ravi Shankar, but I want to go back to this Amendment 13. In 2009, LTTE was completely decimated. The leadership was completely taken out. And the government, the then Mahinda Rajapaksa government said that they will rehabilitate Tamils. In your view, do you think that effort has happened? This is now 13 years, so there is some time that has elapsed. We can take a look at it. Again, there also, I believe India has built a lot of houses so that those who are staying as refugees in mainland Tamil Nadu could go back and live there. And this is an ongoing effort that not many people talk about. So your views on how that rehabilitation effort has been?
Look, let's put it in this thing. How that rehabilitation effort has been and not and all that. I don't think this is the time to talk about it. To be very frank, you get that into the center stage, all the suspicions about India's role in Sri Lanka will come back again. Okay, and let's also face the fact, for all the time the major thing was that at least we got the 13th Amendment through, and they promised devolution of powers to the Tamils. I know not much has happened, but this is not the time to talk about it. I mean, that's my view. Also remember, in the intervening period from then to now, there is no way we could have enforced it in any manner, because we had lost our hold in Sri Lanka. China had occupied that space. China was totally backing Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mahinda Rajapaksa could do what they wanted. To the extent at some points of time, they showed two fingers to India, and we could do nothing about it. Right? So I think if you go back in time and see why they didn't do it, how they didn't do it, why things happened, you will not move forward. You have an opportunity today. Opportunity in two ways. You're the only one who's helping Sri Lanka reinforce that. Second, there is a certain amount of consensus amongst all parties. When I say all parties, all ethnicities and minorities within Sri Lanka to move forward. That is a great opportunity. As part of the entire rebuilding, these two leveraged will give hopefully some devolution of powers to the Tamils. But if you take that as the main cause, I think we'll lose it. Now, you've spoken about, Rajiv Gandhi, this, that, all that. You have to understand at that point of time, I will not blame only Rajiv Gandhi. I mean, fine, he was a young prime minister at that point of time, fine, inexperienced, okay. But or bureaucracy, or foreign office, or defense, everyone played against each other. There was no coordination between the center and the state. When I say center and the state, the central government and the Tamil Nadu government, they were at loggerheads with each other. We went to support someone and ended up supporting someone else and doing something else. So that is a very sorry episode in our thinking, in our strategic, landscape. Right? And we need to draw lessons from it. It's not as if, look, just because we've erred at that point of time, doesn't mean that you have to correct those mistakes. The way to correct the mistake is learn from it and do the right thing now. What is the right thing now? Like I told you, We need to be friends to the people of Sri Lanka. When you say friends to the people of Sri Lanka, it is not Buddhists alone, or it's not Sinhala alone, it is not Tamils alone, it is not Muslims alone, it is not Christians alone, or any other community. To the whole lot of them, we have to see that everyone gets his due. And this, like at the cost of repetition, seems to be the, at this point of time, the view amongst the people of Sri Lanka, right? So let's cash in on it to the extent feasible. When other issues and problems do come up, or they will come up, it's not, like I said, things won't, it's not a rosy path here and after. So let's tackle it then, mature manner. Most important of this, we need to have internal unity between the center and states. We need to have a very clear policy which is across the board, because we might get into a refugee situation, we might get into other situations, right? We don't know, because the path ahead is a little hazy and rocky. So we need to be patient and we need to be mature in our approach, right? Okay, having said this, I think we are, because India at that point of time to today's India is a big difference. The second point is, if you see, no one else has interfered or spoken of anything in this whole story. For them, whatever is happening in Sri Lanka is happening. It doesn't matter. Let it happen. Everyone is fixated. The West is fixated with the Russia-Ukrainian war. China has got its own problems. We'll discuss that. So they've left it to India to sort it out. Sri Lanka also knows today that if they want anything done, it has to go through India. Even IMF might not, reach out to them directly without India's, stamp. Or rather, India is saying, okay, please go ahead, we'll stand by you. A lot of things which can happen will be through India. Even US, Japan is another major creditor of Sri Lanka. Now, Japan and India have good equations. So I think even Japanese will say, okay, let's go through India. I mean, that's the thing one gets. Then India has got the opportunity of using the Quad platform, right? After all, this is part of the Indo-Pacific construct. And Sri Lanka is a critical strategic player in the, nation in the Indian Ocean region. All right, it sits astride the major sea lines of communication. So I think India has got its role, and we can't go back to that IPKF era and think like that also. So far about India. Yeah.
General Ravi Shankar, I just wanted to compliment what you said. One of the options that India has, and this is again out of the box thinking, sir. You see, right now there are two challenges that Sri Lanka has. Let's say Sri Lanka picks itself up. IMF gives them a loan and it picks itself up. But because of the fact that its exports are so little and imports are going to be high, their rupee is again going to come under stress. Is there a way the thing can be arranged in a way that Indian rupee becomes legal tender in Sri Lanka? And this is, and with a view that India's industries could also establish branch offices and use Sri Lanka to manufacture some things, perhaps. Just try to make it a little bit easier. Why I'm saying all this is, see, India is also one of the biggest tourist numbers. In terms of numbers, India was one of the biggest country with the people visiting Sri Lanka. It's very close, right? It's 2.5 hours, 3 hours. You just hop there, spend the weekend, have fun, and come back. So can something like that be thought as a grand Marshall Plan kind of thing for Sri Lanka by India?
Well, that's a noble thought and a good idea, but it might not work. Only for the simple reason, the moment you say rupee is legal tender there, you are, it might be viewed as impinging on their sovereignty. I would rather go in for a free trade agreement, or I wouldn't say even a free trade agreement, an open trade agreement, open border kind of a system where all what you said can be done. See, like you have to revive their tea. Tea is their major industry. You also have a major tea industry. You can help them. Okay. Tourism, there's no two ways about it. You can help them quite a bit. You can help them in their agriculture, revive their agriculture, right? It is just not money because there's a lot of things which you can do to help them, right? So it's better you do it uh, in a in a in a sophisticated manner than you say accept my currency as legal tender. What you're saying might happen on its own. I mean, why do you want to make it legal? Why do you want to make it official? Let it happen unofficially. If it happens unofficially, all the better. Right? So I think the underlying point which I'll keep making is be a friend in need. Right? And let them say friend indeed. And let them revive. I mean, you have to grant it to them. Because I find that at the end of the day, again, which I come back, here is a major event which has gone past without great violence. There is something in these people who are stoic enough to go through all this problem and hope for a better future. Give it to them. Help them to that. That's my view.
General Ravi Shankar, what I had suggested is what I saw play and I see continuing to play between US and Mexico. You go into Mexico, you can pay for anything in dollars.
There's a difference between... No, look, you go to Cambodia, you pay for anything in dollars. Why go to Mexico? I mean, let me give you this. I went to Cambodia some time back. And when I went to Cambodia, look, Cambodia is almost a client state of China, isn't it?
Right.
You know, everything in Cambodia is Chinese, right? But when you go to the market, you go to a restaurant, he'll ask you for dollars. He doesn't want this Cambodian whatever baht or whatever it is, or he doesn't want yuan. He wants dollars. So you're talking about a different equation. I understand what you're talking of, NAFTA, free, all that, but the relationship between Mexico and USA is not the, what shall I say, standard which you can apply for the relationship between Sri Lanka and India. For the simple reason, that shadow of the IPKF LTTE era still lingers. You might think that you're doing good. You might be ending in a different story. So to that extent, no, there's a reality, right? And mind you, I've had Sri Lankan students. I've had, not now, when I was a captain, we've had, we've done courses with them. I've taught Sri Lankan students. I've interacted with Sri Lankans in, Chennai quite often because a lot of them used to come here and study here, right? So this is the sense I get. And mind you, you let things move, they'll all automatically like you. If you don't impose anything, then you also have to think, where else can they go at this point of time? There's no other place. No one is helping them. Even today, no one is helping them. China, I said, will give at some point of time. They themselves say at some point of time we expect something from China. Nothing has come. No other country has given them, even Japan, US, no one has given them anything. Even the IMF says you have to stand by them. So let it happen. Naturally, it will happen.
You're probably right. See, there's a hidden message here. If there are two currencies side by side in a very small neighborhood, and if one currency depreciates lesser than the other one, then if you store it in that currency that is depreciating less, then essentially it's your bank giving you back interest. Just my thought.
Look,
anyway.
No. That's the economic and logical point of view. We're not talking of that. We're talking of a different point of view.
I know. Emotions are taking.
Yeah.
Let's get back to China, sir.
Yeah.
There was a time 3-6 months ago when my friends, this was when, the bottom hadn't fallen under Sri Lanka. People who were visiting as tourists from India, they said, we have been to Sri Lanka before. There used to be a good mix of tourists. But this time when we went there, I'm not talking about 6, 8 months ago, the place is crawling with Chinese. And it is surprising that from a situation where it had been overrun by Chinese, and now there, how have things changed? Are the Chinese stopped coming to Sri Lanka now? What is your read on what China is doing and why it is doing what it's doing?
See, I remember doing a show with some other show where we were talking of the regional affairs. This is about 6, 7 months back. Uh, Protests started happening in the streets of Sri Lanka. Even whenever a Chinese politician visited Sri Lanka. In fact, I remember Wang Yi had visited Sri Lanka and there were protests on the streets. Sri Lanka had to barricade his way so that and keep protesters away. All this had come out, and the trouble signs were there then itself. There was a general feeling that the Rajapaksas had sold out to China completely. That Hambantota has become an international model of how not to do things, and that airport, Matala Rajapaksa Airport, where flights don't take off, international airport. You see, these are all sure things which are visible to everyone. And then they have that Lotus Tower, where I don't think anyone is staying now, right now, except lights. So all these people know, and people know that China has just given them money, built infrastructure which they don't need, and they're indebted to China, and they've lined up Gotabaya Rajpaksha, and this is the way China operates everywhere, and people are in problem. And people also know, I mean, I'm sure people realize they're not fools, that today when China is their biggest creditor, the Chinese government sovereign loans and the loans from the bank are nearly 26% of Sri Lankan debt. That's a heavy amount. Okay. Today, when Sri Lanka is in a problem, till yesterday you are saying China is your all-weather friend. Don't worry, we are there. Today it's gone. They're not giving anything. When and this whole problem, if you go back, Wangi situation, which I said is one point, but it goes back to a time when the Chinese were trying to offload, in I would say, some rubbish fertilizer,
Yes, yes.
fertilizer which had gone bad, I think overaged and gone past the expiry date, and that had become virtually poison. And the Sri Lankans won't accept it. The Chinese said, "You bloody well take it." And there were 2 shiploads or 3 shiploads which were returned back. And from that day onwards, the Chinese have been trying to teach Sri Lanka a lesson. And everyone knows. And that was a time when probably they needed the good fertilizers because
Organic farming.
that organic farming thing went fut. And if this fertilizer at that point had come in, uh, maybe to some extent by now, they would have got one crop at least. They didn't. They couldn't. Right? It just worsened their situation, and everyone knows it in Sri Lanka. And from then to now, China has not helped them. They said we'll give you money ahead, some 70, 80 million dollars. Nothing has come through. They've asked for loan restructuring because IMF has said all your loans need to be restructured. It can't happen that IMF gives you money and you repay someone else's debt. So restructure debt. China has not done that. So if China doesn't restructure debt, how does IMF release a loan? Okay, so there are a whole lot of issues. They've asked China for some money, which China has said, okay, we'll consider it. That's a different thing. China has got its own problems. So China has been seen to be someone who has not helped. Yeah, politically to be right, a politician or some famous personality on TV will say, oh, China is still there. We'll go at some point of time, they'll help and all that. On the streets, everyone is very clear that China is not their friend. Okay. Look, the whole population is in a problem. Today, their problem is not whether China is their friend or India is their friend. Their problem is, can I get food tomorrow to eat? Can I get fuel in my scooter? Can I get medicines? Can I go to a hospital? Someone needs to help them there. If you are seen to be helping them, you get the gain. If China is not seen to be helping them, they don't get the game. And if Gotabaya Rajpaksha and the Rajpaksha clan stood where the front faces of China, and if that man doesn't have a place to stay tomorrow, it applies to China also. Right? So to that extent, that for China to come back into the scene will take a long time. But then China is still the biggest debtor. Okay. Like I said earlier, the SLPP is still Rajpaksha's party. Rajpaksha still have that, rest of the clan is still there. So don't count the Chinese out, don't count the Rajpaksas out, they still can make trouble. How much they can do is a different story. Because if you see the Chinese thing, in the overall context, their economy is in a bad shape. They've got COVID problems. If you see, their banks are in a mess. People are not paying mortgages there. Just now, just about 10 minutes before I got onto your show, I saw a clip in which tanks are in some street in China in front of a bank.
Yes,
Something like
yes,
Tiananmen Square.
yes, yes.
So they are in their own problems. For him to come to Sri Lanka and help, I think at this point of time is a little far away. They've been, booted out of Angola. They've had problems in Southeast Asia. They have not been able to enter Afghanistan. Everyone thought, China now will enter Afghanistan and they'll take all copper out and all that. Once USA left and Pakistan, all at that point of time, 6 months back. Nothing has happened. They're still worried. They're still worried about ETIM. So China has got its hands full. Their influence in this area has gone down. And their game is getting opened. Right? So they're losing face and influence. Why will they come here? It's not in the Chinese mentality to help anyone. Name one country which China has helped in its crisis. I mean, I don't know. I don't know of any country.
Yeah, then the number is still zero, sir.
Zero. So that's a great opportunity for India. In fact, that's what I've written. Sri Lanka should be the first pearl which should fall from that string. You need to be patient, you need to be smart, you need to be honest. And you need to be with the people of Sri Lanka and let the people of Sri Lanka work for you. Or do what is good. Whatever is good for them, if it is done, it will be good for India.
Yes, indeed, General. And I think we are at the end of our discussion part, and let's take a few questions. General Ravi Shankar, we have a few questions, and I'll have our editor put up the questions. I saw one at least.
Yeah.
Is there any chance, General Ravi Shankar, is there any chance LTTE is raising its head again in Sri Lanka with help of DMK?
I don't think so. Honestly, no. Right, this is a far-fetched question. Well, they would be thinking on this line, but I don't see that happening. One, I think the DMK as a party has also moved on from that time. The Tamils have also changed, and the government of India has also changed. The overall thinking of government of India. The very fact that 2 days back the complete opposition was taken on board and briefed about the situation and how it's being handled. I think there's a consensual approach, right? I don't think. I don't think Tamil Nadu has the appetite to return back to the LTTE days. You see, it also is, unless the situation deteriorates there and unless a lot of things happen, I don't see that happening. At this point of time, very remote.
It is believed,
and I hope it doesn't happen.
I know we don't get into politics during our hangout, but it is believed that it doesn't matter which party the politician belongs to. Tamil Nadu politicians are believed to have a lot of real estate in Sri Lanka, in the area that is occupied. No, let me finish, sir. In the area occupied by Sinhalas. Please go ahead, sir.
Hey, look, these things are part of politics, and there's no thing. Politicians do strange things. what do they say? Politics makes strange bedfellows. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
okay. But as an instrument of the state and as an instrument of state policy, I don't think we are going to go there. Okay.
Next
If you
question,
go
please.
there, we get to that, the situation is bad.
Venkat wants to know, why are Sinhala people hating India in spite of the help?
I don't think they hate India the way we think so. There would be some people who will hate, but that's in any like any thing. But I think there's a realization that India is helping them, and this is what I see from what I've spoken to people. I've seen in various media reports, discussion forums, everything. I don't think that is there that they hate India. The moment you start thinking they hate you, then your behavior pattern changes. I think we also need to change, right? So we'll hope for the best.
Kishore TVK wants to know, is this not the Chinese who are responsible for toppling of current government and also deciding the next one?
I don't think so. This is far fetched. Like I said, India. Some of us in India don't have the confidence that we can do things the right way, and we always feel that the other guy is stronger and China is doing everything. Look, China is in a mess itself. Okay, let me put something else in the forefront about China. You take any issue, international issue of concern, of divergence of opinion, X, Y, Z, whatever you call it. One recurring factor in that is the 20th People's Congress and the necessity of Xi Jinping to get re-elected. Anything which is inimical to that will not be done by China. I mean, let's be very clear. If if China does anything, and if that anything does not contribute to Xi Jinping being re-elected, he will not do it. If he plays this high-risk game in Sri Lanka and something else happens, the rebound will be on China. China has a lot to lose by doing what toppling governments and deciding who the next one is. In fact, I think China is discovering people's power and it scares them. Connected with what I've said, they've got tanks in a street in front of the bank. That's how scared they are of people. 100, 200, 300 people have gone and demonstrated in front of a bank, and people in China for their own money, and they have lined up tanks in a street. You can look at the NDTV. NDTV has put out this picture. And here, the whole president has been driven out by people. And you say that's by China? I think we have to change our thinking.
Yes, indeed. And viewers, there's a lot of videos. There are a lot of videos on PGurus that dwell on this topic. The last one with Sasha Gong explained what happened, and also the last one with Elmer Ewan, where we talked about what was happening in the banks. One country, one city, 4 banks, and all of them were refusing money. All that is explained in a fair amount of detail, so you can get it from there. Don't go to NDTV. I don't like NDTV. I have to say this thing.
But that's okay. But look, I'm only quoting the clip which they put out.
Because NDTV doesn't even name me, sir. They should hate me because I'm the one who
that's
brought out the whole thing. But
No, I'm not talking of all that. I'm just talking of the clip which I saw. It's a reference.
Yes. Just in jest.
Yeah, that's okay.
TVK Kishore wants to know, how would it be different from Afghanistan? Today they threatened Indians for marrying Afghanistan women.
I've not understood this question at all.
I think what he's saying is that a foreigner is always looked at as a foreigner, and people don't.
It's always there everywhere.
To draw, yeah.
That's always there everywhere. So I've not understood that question and why it is.
Yeah. I think it may be a little quickly put together. B.S. Rai wants to know, sir, your views on other pearls of Bangladesh and Burma.
Yeah, Myanmar, I wouldn't say is really a part of that pearl, a string of pearls, because If you see Myanmar, and if you see the history of Myanmar, and you go back, we've done a show on it, a
Yes,
beautiful
yes,
side presentation on Myanmar. If you
yes,
go into the
yes,
history of Myanmar,
yes.
China has not entered Myanmar and succeeded. Okay, they might have a lot of business interests in Myanmar. That's a different story. As much as you think, they have an influence in Myanmar, Myanmar has an influence in that part of China for many reasons. Okay, so their relations are not that great. Uh, it's been a long time that the Chinese want to put that China Myanmar economic corridor through, but they have not been able to do it. So I don't think Myanmar is a really, a lot of business things are happening. Beyond that, nothing much. And the Myanmaris are very clear. That's why they've started dealing with India. They don't want to become a part of that. And they've hedged. What is happening in Myanmar today is a different story between the Janta and the National Democratic Movement and all that. That's a different story. NLD. That's a different story altogether. But I also understand the Chinese are trying to help the Janta. They'll deal with anyone. Okay, as far as that is concerned. But I don't think it is pro-China, right? The way we think. Bangladesh was. But again, if you look at that Sonadia port deal, which is along the Chittagong coast, initially Chinese were to build it. This happened about 4-5 years back. The Chinese were to build it. Everything was there. Overnight, that got cancelled, and the Japanese have been given that contract. If China had built that port and had entrapped Bangladesh, right? Then we would have been in a problem. And if it had put in a naval base there, right? We would have been in a real problem. Today it's Japanese. That's why China still doesn't have a foothold in the Bay of Bengal. And Bangladesh, if you see the whole thing, it's very easy to think of Bangladesh as a pearl, as part of the string of pearls. It was some time back. But Bangladesh loans from China have been calibrated. They've always said that, look, that's the stated thing, that we can repay our loans. We have the capability to repay our debt obligations. Okay. So to that extent, Bangladesh has been a little more balanced in its approach with China. When they saw the goings on in Sri Lanka and in Pakistan and even in neighboring Nepal, and whatever is happening in the unrest in Myanmar, which has got a spillover, the Rohingya effect, there's a spillover. I think Bangladesh has learnt its lesson. They might not be very close with you, but they're not going to be too close to China also. Whether this pearl will break from that string, it depends on how you deal with Bangladesh in future. At this point of time, there are issues and there are opportunities. So how we deal, with them, it'll take time, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long drawn process, and it also depends on how India behaves internally. Right? Whatever happens in India will have a domino effect in the neighborhood. So there are other issues, major issues, so which we will at this point of time not get into. Yeah.
Sudhakar Rao wants to know, sir, who is funding the movement in Sri Lanka? Any guesses?
I don't know. That nothing has come out. But then this seems to be something like an Arab Spring. Who funded the Arab Spring? No one. Right? So this is something, the Argalaya is like something like a Arab Spring which has happened. I did read a story where it took off from the Facebook with a set of people. Is it fully leftist? It's not. Is it fully rightist? It is not. I see monks also coming onto the streets. I see Tamils also coming onto the streets. There's a lot of spontaneity in whatever is happening. If it was fully funded movement and everything, I would have expected violence. Because nothing beats violence in these movements. But that's not happened. Right. So I don't know whether There's organized funding. Seems to be some organization. Whether it's a funded effort or not, I don't know. It'll come out. Yeah.
General, how much time do you have, sir? About half a dozen questions still
Yeah,
remain.
we'll take it.
Can
Don't
we
worry.
take them? Yeah,
Yeah,
but
we'll take it.
viewers, I think we will stop taking questions now because it becomes an unending situation.
Yeah.
He's going to be back next week, and something similar topic. So we can hold your questions for next week. At this point, we will answer these questions and then we'll go on from there.
No problem.
Sundara 1957 again is will India provide fertilizer to increase the agricultural scheme in Sri Lanka?
I think so. It should be part of the deal slowly. At this point of time, you're giving them fuel, medicines, and food. Slowly things will come out. We've also said we put in we not only this, we also put in an infrastructure plan for them. It's all there, right? But have we reached that stage? Not yet. Will we reach that stage? I'm sure. Yeah.
Girish Lohani wants to know, is India again into Dan, Veer, Karna mode, or are we playing smart? I hope nothing goes for free.
Look, I find this question indicative of lack of our own confidence in what we are doing. I also find this question indicative of, which indicates lack of strategic confidence in the part of India. I think we've gone past that. Look, the very fact that the international community is using India as a pointsman there gives you a lot of pointers as to where we are going. If you are the pointsman in Sri Lanka, for Sri Lanka also you're the pointsman to the international community. They have to go through you. That's why I said we stood by them next to them in the IMF to get loans. Right? And as I see, we have a great equation with Japan. And India and Japan put together also are great, form a large chunk of creditors to Sri Lanka. You have that influence. And plus you have other equations. You have a cultural equation. You still, look, how do I put it? Every Buddhist from Sri Lanka wants to go to Bodh Gaya. Okay, that's there. I mean, I don't know if any one of you gone to Bodh Gaya. I've been there. And I've been there 4-5 times. And I find there's a lot of traction there. Bodh Gaya and that entire Buddhist circuit, Nalanda and all that. So we need to know that we have a lot of deep links with Sri Lanka. Okay. Like I said, this is a time when they need us. We need to help them out. Things will flow.
Giridhar Mamadi wants to know, should we not explore the Bhutan model for Sri Lanka, taking over the monetary, foreign and defense policies while leaving the rest with their parliament for our own long-term security?
This is what we tried when we went to IPKF and we came out with grief. Okay. So I don't think we should even entertain these thoughts.
Gopikrishna V wants to know, what is the strategic importance of Mongolia for India?
Yeah, Mongolia is very important because it's on the other side of China. Right?
And it's Buddhist.
And it is Buddhist and part Buddhist. And any pressure you want to put on China, Mongolia is a funnel. It's a difficult ask, but the fact is that after a long time, you started an outreach to Mongolia a couple of years back, right? Because that's in the Chinese backyard completely between China and Russia, and with Russia being where it is, they might not allow you space in Mongolia, right? But then you have to try.
Well, we have covered this section about India versus India and Mongolia, the help that was never delivered, as a different topic for a different day.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Thank you very much, General Ravi Shankar, because some promises were made that were not followed through.
Anyway, I agree with you.
Yeah. So thank you so much, General Ravi Shankar. With you, it's always a pleasure, sir, because we touch upon so many different topics. And this is, again, this government's challenge in the sense, even the good things they do, they don't communicate. And the bad thing, somebody else is putting it on them. See, that is the problem.
Yeah, I think, there I agree with you. I mean, let me make a larger point in this before, you made a very critical point. The strategic communication of India needs to change. Today, you're in information era. If you are in an era of narratives. If you see the Russia-Ukraine war, uh, the information domain played a large part, right? And here we are, as a rising power, you don't have a strategic communication policy. You don't have a information and a narrative building setup, and you are getting pummeled day in and day out from Pakistan and China. Why can't we do that? And we have a Ministry of Information and Broadcasting.
Ironic, isn't it? Thank you very much,
Look,
General Ravi Shankar.
I think we need to do a lot. I think that's an important point. We can, yeah.
Yes. And thank you very much, General Ravi Shankar. And we'll be back next Wednesday, same time, slightly different topic, but a lot more insights. Namaskar.
Thanks. Thank you. Namaste.